markets is supplying paint and coatings to the elevated water tank market around the country. About 20 years ago, we started an award called Tank of the Year Award, which each year we have over 500 tanks that are submitted. And our committee looks at workmanship, paint scheme, and the complexity of the logo. So I'm proudly here representing TMIC to present to Brunswick-Glynn County an award that you can proudly display as first runner-up in 2021. So, let me get a picture.
And this was for the Prince Street tank, as you see coming over the City Lanier Bridge coming into
Right.
downtown.
Jason, can you pull a picture of that up on our computer so we can look at it?
Yes, sir, I sure could. Here you go.
Appreciate the opportunities, appreciate your time today.
Tell us about the,
And Ben, I'll say this, yesterday, GAWP, 50-year Lifetime Achievement Award.
He stole my thunder, but now he's gonna do the same thing.
You can do it formally, but I've known Ben for 25, 30 years and saw the earth. So take care, guys.
tell us how Tanimic's name came about.
Yeah, Tanimic's name is cement spelled backwards. So I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yes.
It is cement spelled backwards. And when he told us a quick story,
Yeah,
well, real quick. Former founder of our company was walking by a construction site in 1920, saw a steel rod sitting out of concrete. At the base of the steel rod, saw there was no rust. Came up with a conclusion that's true today, that Portland cement is a rust-inhibited pigment. In 1921, started a company supplying alkyd primers to the elevator grain silo markets in Kansas and Missouri. It was alkyd paint, the little Portland cement sprinkled on top as a rust-inhibited pigment. What will I call my company? I'll call it Tanimic, cement spelled backwards.
That's great.
and Dean and his company, they give us recommendations on all of our tanks as far as the paint to use.
But then did you want to tell me?
And
Right,
plants.
this one, right, click on the picture so it'll get bigger.
Can you zoom in on it?
Yep. So this is on their website, so it's, Brunswick
Yeah.
Tank of the Year, so this is the logo.
Beautiful
Brunswick
tank,
logo.
beautiful logo. The logo really catches the committee's eyes. And I know a lot of you guys have calendars from our Tank of the Year Awards. And just scroll through the calendars, and each month we feature like the Brunswick tank. And it's all really neat color schemes and paint schemes and so forth. So, Tank Pro out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama did a nice job. You guys had third-party inspection. He did a nice job. So it was an all-hands effort to get a quality job.
And Jason drives the drone so we can inspect it further, right, Jason?
Yes, sir, sure do.
Yep, our drone
Hopefully
pilot.
we can knock out a mural on the next one. We'll see.
Get first place, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you for coming, Dean. We got moved to the approval section, minutes from the June 15th, 2022 Facilities Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to accept those?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Motion carries. Second item is minutes from the June 15th, 2022 Facilities Executive Session. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Infrastructure and easement dedications. Mr. Klein?
Big box.
Takes a second to load them.
Yeah, there's a lot of record
Yep.
for scanning and
Yep.
whatnot, so it takes a second.
It took a long time to load. Oh,
There we go. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Let's zoom in here. This item is related to dedication of privately installed water and sewer infrastructure. The projects are complete. Were inspected along the way, and the developer does wish to dedicate this infrastructure to the joint water for ownership and maintenance from here on out. The two projects are, first is Golden Isles Aviation, south of Old Demery Road on the south side of Old Demery. New development going in there, a short little stub out of water to connect in, but there is a force main that runs longitudinally along Old Demery right away to receive a manhole. So that's included that one. The second one is with Century Place Habitat for Humanity. Includes a sewer easement and also dedication to that water sewer infrastructure. It's a little bit more on that one. So, and commissioners, as always, we do appreciate the review of the documents sent out and appreciate the feedback that we're able to address a few things sometimes before the meetings. The locations of the dedications are included, and then also record drawings, as well as with the dedication application includes the engineer of records appraised value or estimated value of those improvements. Record drawings included as well as part of the attachments. If there's any specific questions, I'm happy to
I have
do my
a
best to
question.
address them.
I do have a question. How did this come to our attention?
Okay, so typically, anything that involves public water and sewer improvements, private or, to remain private or public, comes through the, in this case, Glynn County and or City of Brunswick's
Okay.
development review process.
Okay.
They are the permittors of all development projects within Glynn County, and we sit at the table as a review entity, and we review these projects. So we first become aware of them. Sometimes developers or people with projects will come in ahead of time to talk about water and sewer availability, possibly, as the first initiation we get with folks. If not, when the permit comes in to the city or the county for review, that's when we become aware of what they're
So
intending to do.
on the first one then, was this something that was just done recently?
It was completed recently. The project, it's been going for some, over the last year.
So it was pretty much an automatic trigger in the process, right?
Correct, right.
What
And
about the second one? Is the second one the same way, the Century?
the second one is, it's a little more involved with the project rather than just connections.
Right.
There's actually internal infrastructure that's installed, and the
That was done
quantity is greater.
recently also?
It was correct,
Okay.
completed recently. So we're involved throughout the construction of the water and sewer side of things, and we press real hard all the way to the end to get the proper documentation so we can, for longevity's sake, we know with record drawings about the infrastructure itself, but also for the dedication documents. So there's no lingering questions as to who owns it, who's to
Right.
maintain it from now on out.
Todd, can you explain the force main on the first one?
Yes, sir. So in this case, this is off of Old Demery Road. It's essentially a hangar structure improvement there. The customer, there was no gravity sewer immediately available to the development, and the way they chose to or decided to reach our collection system was through a grinder pump station, which is going to be owned and maintained by the property owner. Goes out into the right-of-way with a 2-inch force main, and that force main parallels the right-of-way to the nearest receiving manhole.
So is this saying that we own the force main in the right-of-way, but they own the force main to the right-of-way, is that right?
Correct, right. The right-of-way is the dividing line for public-private ownership, and at that dividing line, the physical thing you'll see is a valve box, and underneath that valve box is what we call the dual check assembly. Dual check valve in there, and then also a ball valve. So that's the point of delineation between public and private. If there's an issue on the private side and whatnot, we can isolate the public system, which is out in the right-of-way, if the board accepts it for dedication. We can isolate operations, can isolate that system.
They're tying to a manhole out there.
Correct.
So there's a gravity sewer there.
There is gravity sewer.
Why couldn't they tie to that gravity sewer?
It would have been extremely costly for them to dig into Old Demery Road, and the county was not in favor of that. As part of the review process, the applicant also has to work with Glynn County or city, depending on the public right-of-way that's involved. So they have some say-so into how the connections are made sometimes.
With this 2-inch line, how did they wind up connecting to the manhole? Did they do a directional drill to it? Or was there an existing stub out?
There was no existing stub out in this case. They had to, I believe they trenched this one in, dug it in, open dug it in the shoulder.
But how'd they tie into the manhole?
Core, they had to do a core and what we call a link seal, which is a compression, neoprene stainless compression band
Then,
goes in.
every time we have a force main like this core into a manhole, the owner is required to coat the manhole as well. So the manhole has been recoated after the coring.
That's correct.
Due to the force main discharge going in there and some of the gases that may affect the structure of the manhole, so we require them to be recoated each time.
Now, before we approved the use of a grinder pump in this force main, did they give us a cost estimate for putting in a gravity sewer? Because that manhole might have been deep enough they could have extended a gravity sewer to it.
Certainly it's possible, would have been possible. For
And that way we could have served perhaps somebody farther upstream too.
Much more costly. Did they provide us an estimate of that? No, sir.
Well, I mean, I know it's done now and we're voting on something else, but I think we need to, anytime somebody like this comes in and the line can be extended and they can serve by gravity, it's gonna be better. They could extend the manhole just up to where, and then this force main just tie right into that if they want to use a grinder pump.
Certainly can, certainly can. Imagine we need to be prepared to discuss cost with them.
Yeah,
You know, if we press the issue with them.
yeah,
Certainly gravity's preferred. Even for the owner,
yeah.
nobody really wants to maintain, if not necessary, pumps. Gravity connection is certainly better.
Can you present to us sometime how we go about this and what our standards say or whatever, and how we go about determining this, so we as a facilities committee can talk about it?
Sir, yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll offer the motion. I'll move that the facilities committee forward these projects with associated dedications and easement to the full commission for approval and acceptance.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item is Pump Station 4036 CIPP project, final balance and change order. Mr. Klein.
Let's see.
Scroll down.
Yeah.
Right there.
I X'd out of the whole thing again. Here we go, quickly back. CIPP project 4036, associated with 4105 and 4107. Okay. All right, so this project is essentially, well, this is the final action to close this project out here. Payment-wise, all construction is complete on the project. This was our large lining project, CIPP, or cured-in-place lining.
Can you show us on the drawing, picture where this work was done?
Certainly.
Or is it in our packet?
I don't think we have a,
It's not in the packet.
Is
Yeah.
4035 and 4036 is in that area?
This was
It is.
upstream of 4036. This went along the railroad tracks that go by the canal and parallel Old Jessup, and also went out onto Glendale and 341 as well.
So that's the one that Ogden Road Force Main ties into,
Yes, sir.
comes into that sewer.
It
Ogden
does.
Road force main ties into this, and then the project we have planned for this year to reroute the force main from 4105 will tie in at the upstream portion of this as well.
I
So
just-
before we tie those two big lines in, we wanted to get these downstream segments.
Can you show us on the map where we spent the $923,000 on the sewer rehab, the length of it?
yeah, let me get GIS fired up here.
And then just give us an idea of the service area that might be serving in the future.
Certainly. While that's loading up, I can talk about it. Service area, as Mr. Burrows said, it terminated, the work somewhat terminated there at the canal on the backside of 4036, which we'll take a look at here for a second. If you can imagine, from B&W Grade Road down Old Jessup out to New Jessup Road out towards exit 36, that commercial area northward a little bit, and then on up Old Jessup even up to Crispin. It's the general area. So it's a large area. It's residential, commercial, industrial even mixed up in there.
But there's a lot of people not sewered in there.
That's correct. That is correct. We'll see that here. Now, this is 4036. The septic tank's pulled up. This kind of gives an example, a little bit of a visual. So 4036 is here. This is the canal, historic Altamaha Canal. This is Old Jessup, essentially up here, right here. B&W Grade Road, canal goes out to Yellow Bluff Creek. So this area here between exit 36 essentially all drains through down into the lines that we did. It comes down here down Glendale, parallels the tracks, the parallel Old Jessup, comes down here, crosses the canal, goes to 4036, which we just revamped. So.
And we hit some segments underneath the interstate as well.
Segments interstate, thank you. Yeah, so you'll probably remember we talked in depth about this project in past facilities.
So that's where it started up there?
It started right there at Crispin. And we pre-televised all these lines, had them inspected, and we didn't line every one of those segments through there. We lined the ones that were in need of rehab. So that's why it says it's a mile of pipe, and obviously that's more than a mile of pipe from Crispin all the way down, but this was a result of internal CCTV efforts to get this done.
Those the VC pipes or the PVC pipes?
Got some cast.
Had some VCP upstream, downstream was a lot of cast, so kind of a mix. And then some sections that didn't get lined that had been previously replaced had been replaced with PVC. So you got a bunch of different stuff out there.
Yeah, it was a good mix. Part of it is you're reading the bullet points in the or staff report in the memo. Some of the bypassing, the heavy cleaning, all that is part of the driver of this change order.
Did they rehab all the manholes too?
No, sir. No manholes.
This was just gravity lines here. Yeah, so the manholes in 2018 had done a number of these in this basin back in 2018.
Okay.
And if they have sections where they had consecutive segments, they'll actually line through the manhole and then just cut out the top so the invert of the manhole gets lined again through the lining process.
Yeah, it works really well when they can do that.
Okay.
So the change order is based on adjustment of units.
That's correct. When we do these lining projects and cleaning projects, we put line items in there for heavy cleaning, deposit cuts, and things like that. We can't necessarily project exactly what that's going to be, and so this is just to adjust based off of what they came into.
We've already negotiated the rates on the units and then settle up on the units based on actual execution.
These were, just throw this in here too, we shadowed the contractor thoroughly on this project as well. You know, we learned something, but we're there, the pre-CCTV work that was done, we knew what was there for the most part. But yeah, we shadowed with inspection.
The only line we didn't know what was there was the one underneath the interstate because we couldn't get through it, and we wanted to let the professionals clean that one.
And we got a post video.
We have a post video.
Post video.
Yes, sir.
And that actually went really well. We were kind of, you know, we leave it on the contract for means and methods on bypass, and we still approve. That was DOT permitted also work. So since it's within their right of way and also within the limited access part of the interstate, the overpass. But they trucked, well, they trucked it. Trucked it by tanker. They stopped it and they suck out of the one hole, run down, line, and dump. And they did that. And they actually had looked like a grain auger where they would the pumps, and they'd fill up their trucks with air gap, and they'd run down.
Grief.
It actually worked, and then it was night work, so this was through the night. So we had an inspector most times.
This is a good example of a project where we have multiple projects going on at one time, and people may not always understand the bigger picture. 4036 was just rehab with SPOS money, so this project actually got delayed for a few days because 4036 got behind because of the pump delivery schedule. Then when 4030, so they couldn't get in and do those lines. So this project got delayed, but it was really outside of their control. Well, they had to come through and actually line these segments before we could tie in the force main from Ogden, because we didn't want to turn the new flow into the lines before they were rehabbed. So you had 3 separate projects all going on in the same area, and each one of them has an impact on the individual projects. And so we sometimes come in and talk about them very, individually and in silos, and there's a lot more going on in a lot of these projects than what people realize.
That's a great point.
Ask a question, if, when we bid out a project like this, when we decide on the number of units that are gonna be required, do we add plus to what, or we just pretty much go with whatever we think is gonna be the actual
We go with
number?
what's ever there, and on some projects, there'll be built-in contingency line items, or extra unit work line items. Like on this one, you had the extra unit works for deposit cleaning and heavy cleaning and things like that. So we build in some things like that, so we already have negotiated pricing for these. But overall, you're looking at a 2.5% total project increase. So pretty good job by staff on estimating what we were going to need on the front end.
I like the approach. I think it works very well.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll move that the Facilities Committee forward the above described change order number 2 to the full commission for approval.
Second.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Next item is, North Mainland SPOS Engineering Change Order number 2. Mr. Klein?
Okay. And, Mr. Burrows, thank you for kind of preempting or tying some of these projects together. This is one of the ones that he mentioned. The North Mainland project, which is essentially complete. We're going through.
Substantially complete.
Substantially complete, thank you for the correct term. Some tidying up, some different types of things, right-of-way permit tightening up issues, but it's functional and it's actually turned around now. So the new force main's working very well for us so far. So this is for the engineering. So our engineer was Thomas and Hutton Engineering Company. As an engineer of record, they did the design work, then also did the contract management and construction oversight, assisted us with that, which included on-site inspections as needed as well. And going back in time on this, SPOS North Mainland, it was a multi-phase project. So original phase or previous phase was a lot of lining work that was included. That lining work actually extended many more days than was originally intended to. And keep in mind, the length of the construction, we still have to keep our engineer engaged in the project. They're still there to manage. They accommodated that. We rolled right into the North Mainland force main reroute, also the pump station rehabs along with that as well. And long and short of it, it extended the job in construction phase by quite a bit, more than we expected. You can see there in the bullet points, 574 days is the time. So along with that extra time to keep that engineer engaged, they did have above and beyond their original contract amount, time and treasure invested in our project. So this, go, was there a question? Oh. This change order actually is, has backup documentation as well from Thomas and Hutton, and to address details.
This is for actual construction phase services
Correct.
that were rendered during the project due to the extended timeframes.
Correct.
And so it would be an adjustment of $50,590.51 to their contract. This is not for any design changes. It is simply for the construction oversight portion of the contract.
By construction oversight, does that mean site inspection or just construction oversight?
Site inspection and then the construction admin from the office perspective.
So all the typical processing of pay apps, the RFI responses, all that as well.
What does the engineering agreement call for as far as additional services? Did it have anything in there for additional services?
We have their rate sheet for additional services, and then for their construction the on-site inspection services, we told them to budget, I believe it was 20 hours a week for the duration of the project. And then we kind of ran out of that budget when the project went on for a year and a half longer than was expected.
So is that broken down into calculations so we can see where that is? Because that seems like a lot of money. Because when the contract is delayed, nobody's out there inspecting.
The delayed, not necessarily no activity or construction going on. So once the force main construction, all that, the pump station projects, there was never really an idle time in construction. Some of the delays originally, especially in the original contract, the lining contract, there was a lot of handling of our contractor, our lining contractor.
It was mostly the lining contractor.
The largest amount of delay was in the initial.
Because we closed that out a long time ago, the lining contract.
Correct,
A year
correct.
ago.
So that really pushed the whole sequence of projects out. Now, we did
I'm
have.
not sure it did that because we had a pipe issue with the pipeline contractor too.
Correct, we
It got
did.
delayed.
Yeah, we did. There was.
We did Ogden, so we just finished it.
Right, right. There was delays, even with the pump station upgrade project, extended time that we awarded the contractor.
And I understand that we've given them the contractor time extensions on both of them, but I'm not sure they were working any more time where the engineer had to do inspection for more
The
time.
bulk of the additional inspection time was on the lining and the manhole work that we did. If you'll recall, the manhole contractor, if I remember correctly, thought they were gonna be in and out in about 60 days, and they were here for 6 months working. It was just an ongoing thing. So the bulk of the additional inspection time was spent with the lining and manhole lining portion of the project.
So the contractor didn't even line some of the manholes he was supposed to line.
We ended up actually having to, yes, we deducted the invert on several of those manholes away. That's correct.
Well, I just feel like we need to figure out how we're gonna do our inspection. I'm just concerned that we're using our people to do some inspection, and we use the engineer to do inspection, we got and I don't know if we did some inspection on this too with the engineer. But if you hire the engineer to do inspection, on a day-by-day basis, well, they're supposed to be there if they're not. So we just need to figure out how we're gonna do this. And if we don't have enough staff to do it, if our staff needs to be doing inspection for private services, private projects,
Also,
then
right.
maybe every engineer who designs it should be providing an inspection. And then they can show us that the contractor took more days or something like that, if it's gonna be based on an hourly basis. But I'm not sure we didn't get a lump sum price. Did we get a lump sum price or just an hourly basis for it?
We got a budgeted price for the estimated time and then hourly rates underneath that to bill against. So the design is lump sum, but the construction phase services, those numbers that are awarded in those engineering contracts are budgets based on estimated length of construction.
Original was around 250 for the original estimated, like you said, contracted amount.
Well, I understand the contractor getting some issues because of supply chain and everything else, but I'm not sure how that really affected the engineer. I'd like for y'all to try to explain that to me and convince me of that.
So, yeah.
I think at the end of the day, they spent a lot more time holding hands on particularly one contractor that we had in town that ate up the bulk, a lot more of the budget. When they budgeted, let's say the 250, if they had budgeted, say, 50,000 for phase 2 or 100,000 for phase 2 and 150 for phase 1, they ended up spending twice that on phase 1, on phase 2,
Okay.
the lining work. And that's where they've been asking for this type change order for going better part of 2 years now.
Well, and if we'd known this, that we were gonna have this change order for that contractor, we might have been a little bit less likely to approve his final payment because we settled with him on some issues rather than enforcing liquidated damages or something like that.
We enforced liquidated damages in the amount of $204,000 on the first contractor. that got-
And really, it was his fault that we paid for more inspection.
That's correct.
So really, he should have paid this out of liquidated damages rather than us paying it.
We did hold $204,000 in liquidated damages back. So
Okay.
in essence, it will be being paid out of that liquidated
Okay.
damages.
All right, well. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee forward the above described change order number 2 to the full commission for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Any other questions? All in favor? All against? Motion carries.
Item number 6, we're going to need to vote to defer to the next meeting. We're still waiting on some documentation from the county for the IGA amendment. The hope was that was going to be able to be completed in time, but did not occur.
They want to use the facility while we're using it
They
too,
want to
right?
use the facility to, for police department training. We're
Yeah.
using the grounds, they want to use the building for the police department training. So we're needing to amend the IGA for that to occur and also to give us some protections due to liabilities while they're out there training.
So we need to defer this to the next month.
Next facility meeting, that's correct.
I'll offer the motion to defer item number 6 until the next scheduled meeting of the Facilities Committee.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second. All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. We'll move to the discussion section, water producing report. Mr. Burrs?
Yes, sir. So this is the second month that we've had this for you, and you see some changes throughout the month. We'll start with the Brunswick district. You see some increased usage from the I-95 and Golden Isles 2 tanks and the Ridgewood tank, both are well site. Reduction in flow at Fletsy, partly contributed because they had to scale back some of their operations during the month. And then also some lower flows at some of the other. The Goodyear Park well, I will say that well has been having some SCADA issues for the past couple of months. We've got a new panel that's been installed now, so those numbers should start coming back up, but that was not able to be ran remotely, so we would turn it on manually in the morning, first thing, and only run it during the day, so it was only running about 8 hours a day compared to a typical well site, which is going to run throughout the day. But you see over on the far right, the daily average for the month there, just shy of 5.3 million gallons. For a point of reference, the capacity for the mainland system is 10.7, so we're running about half during these summer months of what our capacity is on the water system, so we're doing very well on that. And also, the new line on Glencoe was tied in during this period, so we're interested to see how that impacts our flow rates from Fletsy and the other North Mainland wells as those all get used to a steady state period. Per the request of the commission, we've added taste and odor complaints received during the month. I will say these were only recorded for the last 2.5, 3 weeks of the month, but we got one for the Brunswick district during that month, and if I recall correctly, it was a house that had remained vacant for a while. Recommendation was to let them drain their hot water heater and begin using service after that point, and it seemed to clear up.
Okay.
But you can see our water usage does increase somewhat during the summer, not as much as maybe you would expect in some other areas because just our seasonal patterns aren't quite as high, but very much in line with where we had been for the past year and a half there on the Brunswick district.
And the canal well, that's the one that we're gonna be making the improvements to make it a permanent well, is that right?
That's correct. The canal well right now is ran once or twice a month manually, just to make sure it's still firing and ready to go if we need it, but it does not have treatment capacity there. That would be turned on in the event of a high flow situation. The last time we saw significant uses on that, if you recall, when the hotel at Canal Crossing caught on fire a couple of years back, in those situations, we would turn on that canal road well because you got a major water need at that point.
And when should that be going out for bid?
I would expect we'd be out for bid for that sometime this fall or winter. We're waiting now on some wetlands permitting. The area around that facility does have some delineated wetlands, so our consultant has advised us we're probably looking at 6 to 9 months getting a wetlands permit from the Corps of Engineers right now. So that's kind of the holdup on that point at that project.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take a moment and just explain that well to us and how it's gonna be used so far as a hurricane or something like that, and because of its location and everything?
Well, absolutely. All of our well sites have backup generators at them, so they will all be able to fire in the event of a power outage. That well site right there will provide a great deal of additional flow to the FLETC area, where, of course, a lot of people remain during the storm, the airport, where they store a lot of equipment during the storm as well, and then also help backfeed the canal crossing area, which has, since that's come online, which was about, what, 5-6 years ago now, that's a huge water source in our community, user in our community, that has now been tied in. So we've seen the distribution system be impacted by that, not negatively, but just see the flow patterns change. So we're hoping when that canal road well comes online, that will help distribute that flow a little more smoothly. You see the Howard Coffin well obviously runs a lot in downtown, but the I-95 well runs almost as much as that, and that's pushing a lot of water to exit 38 at this point.
Is that well located at one of the highest points in the county?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Over at St. Simon's, 4-well system we have over there, very much in line with where you would have saw last month. Mallory well picked up some of the slack from Hampton, but the actual daily usage, very much in line with where we were last month, only about 100,000 gallons a day difference. But just about 3.4 million gallons a day coming through there, which you kind of look back over the past 16 or 18 months, and that's the highest month we've had on St. Simon's in the past 16 to 18 months. So the island has been very busy, so I expect the tourism numbers will reflect that. And again, one taste and odor complaint, and this one did come from a tourist that came into town into a rental property and had some questions. We also had, it wasn't a taste and odor complaint, there was an issue, somebody had a water softener that got out of whack, and they started getting some undesirable colors out of their faucet, but once you got their water softener contractor out there to take a look at that, that kind of cleared itself up pretty quickly.
Okay.
So you see there, again, this is following very closely along on the pattern from the last year. Obviously, we see a lot more people on the island during the summer months, and the flow patterns reflect that. It's still at 3.4 million gallons. You've got 4.5 million gallons of capacity, or 4.6 million gallons of capacity there on St. Simon's. And at exit 29, 3-well system, 2 wells which are connected to production equipment, and that's the Fancy Bluff well, which is very near the port and Fancy Bluff Park right there. You can see it now that they've cleared some of the trees out of the way. And the Brookman well, which is out at the far end of our distribution network out there by the newish water tower that was installed. Those push relatively equal amounts. The exit 29 well is exactly like we were talking about with canal. That's simply used in the event of high flow. But on the proposed SPLOST list, that well is marked for, if the SPLOST is voted and approved, that well will be converted to a production well also. So about 330,000 gallons a month, 332,000 gallons a month per day coming out down there to the exit 29 area, which, if you notice, if you look at those numbers, that's very much in line on exit 29 to what the actual sewer numbers are. So that one lines up better. It's a newer sewer system, less I&I impacts, and so those numbers will line up a little bit better. But no taste and odor complaints down there either. So very good job. Staff's operating that well and distribution network very well. All right, on the wastewater treatment report we have here at Academy Creek, you'll notice on the rainfall totals, and if you've been spending much time outside, it has been much rainier the last couple of months than it was the 2 months prior to that. So you see the flows weren't necessarily hugely impacted by that because the 2 months of very dry conditions, the first rains after that take a while to fill the water table back up. But at Academy, effluent flow was about 6 million gallons a day leaving the facility, only about 45% of the capacity used there. You do see that we do get, with the rain start going up, we started seeing some reduction in our influent concentrations as a result of that. But the plant is operating very smoothly with the improvements that we've been able to bring online there. TSS and BOD, 99% removal of TSS and 97% removal of BOD for the month. And again, that ammonia number, which we've got to be at 1 before June 1st of 23, got down to the 2 mark. So you see the continual creep towards that limit, and we're making good progress there on that facility. On the flow chart on the back, you'll see we're pretty close in line of where we've been the past year or so. Very much rainfall driven during some months, and so the dry months that we've had allow us to stay pretty low. We've had a lot more rain this month. I have not checked the numbers from this week thus far, but the flow so far early in the month of July is up a little bit given the amount of rain that we've received. Dunbar Creek for the month, you see we've got, like I said, last month we made some calibration improvements to the influent and effluent meters there, brought them more in line. So again, the monthly flow for Dunbar Creek for June, 2.8 million gallons for the month, which is about 70% of our capacity there. And you see rainfall totals on the island, according to the weather stations, were a little lower than they were on the mainland, so a little less rainfall impact on our influent concentrations. We'll note, you'll notice there was a effluent permit exceedance for ammonia for the month. That was due to the last week of the month. We had some extremely high readings leaving that facility. Have not yet been able to pinpoint a specific cause of that. All the other indicators seem to be in line. So I don't want to say it was a bad sample because that seems to take the easy way out to do that, but certainly have not been able to pinpoint what would have caused the levels we were seeing. But 98% BOD removal, 99% TSS removal at that facility, which is a little bit lower than we were this time last year. So some of the I&I improvements we've done over there seem to be helping us out. And then out at Southport, still got an issue with that influent meter that we're trying to pinpoint. It's been recalibrated. The manufacturer says it's calibrated appropriately, but the influent numbers are only about half of what the effluent numbers is, which obviously is not correct. So we're not generating wastewater in the middle of a wastewater facility. So still got some more work to do there. But the effluent is the important number here, about 24% of our capacity used up down there. Very low BOD and TSS as usual due to the impacts of the car washing facilities at the port. But the plant being operated very effectively for the month. Everything well within permit limitations down there at exit 29. 97% BOD, 98% TSS removal, and just a very consistently operated plant down there at exit 29 for us.
A question, the sludge tons to landfill kind of vary quite a bit from month to month. Is there?
Which location?
On the last one, we could just take a second.
Right, oh yes, so certainly. So at exit 29, we have one digester that has an abundance of capacity. So honestly, we run some months more than others simply because we might have less maintenance activities going on and the operator can spend more time running. You can see some months we don't run at all. That's just because we have enough available capacity to do the solids. We don't have to run.
So just efficiency of operations.
Just efficiency of operations, and when you're running 24% of your flow rate, and that's a very low concentration flow rate coming in there, solids loading wise, we're probably closer to, 15% loading of solids at that facility.
Is that called the sweet spot?
That's, I actually would, I'd actually like us to get a little bit more concentration down there.
We're getting there, okay.
Though the organics like to get a little more food to eat sometimes, so.
Okay.
Just at a glance, Andrew, the water production and then the waste processing numbers line up pretty close, just quick arithmetic. And so it would be reasonable to assume that the measuring periods were fairly coincident.
Yes, these are absolutely first day of the month to the last day of the month. So we've got these lined up now where they're doing it that way. Previously, before we started producing this report on the water, we tried to use meter data. And meter data is off of billing cycles, which are not June 1st to June 30th. And that was not lining up. So using the well data, which is what we're using now, that lines up more appropriately, and we can do those comparisons. And in the drier months, those numbers are going to line up a lot more closely than they will in the wetter months of the year.
So I did the quick math on it. We're producing about, on average, this last reporting period, 9 million gallons. And then we processed 9.3. So I find that very encouraging. That tells me we gained about 300.
I know they're coming into the facility as well.
Yeah, and I counted that
Right.
as part of the processing. So and while we didn't produce water for them, it's a little variance there, but I find that the I&I is relatively low.
We've done a lot better job. We've been very successful with some lining projects that we've done. We talked about 2 of them earlier that we did on the mainland, the one that we had the bionomics change order for and the one that IPR did for us, and that has paid tremendous dividends for us on a reduction. Like I said, this month, the first couple of weeks, we saw an increase in flow due to the amount of rain we've gotten. It's rained basically every day this month. And we've seen an increase of about 600 or 700,000 gallons a day, where previously with the amount of rain we were getting, we'd be up at 8.5, 9 million gallons a day. That's anecdotal. We can't prove that, but that feels like where we would be at.
I find it very encouraging that our program is developing results that are reportable.
Absolutely.
What percent of our customers are water-only customers?
Water-only customers, 10%? 10% or so?
Okay, so it's pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
And you'll see some of the drier months also, some of the water levels may get up a little higher because we do have a lot more irrigation customers than we had before.
Mm-hmm.
So that irrigation usage may skew that in some months, but you can kind of follow that. It'll be closer in kind of average weather months, and dry months, the water will be a little higher, and wet months, the sewer will be a little higher.
Yeah, overall, I think what this does, it underscores the condition assessments that we were making and the decisions we're making on the targeted improvements as opposed to a blanket program.
Absolutely.
So I set in very positive. It looks really good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the capital project report photos. This is the fun part.
Okay, capital project. All right, this is the report we look forward to each month. Project facilities, and I'll go through these quickly. We are wrapping up some larger projects. You'll see evidence of that here. This is our mainland force main reroute project, which we mentioned before earlier in the meeting, that is functioning, and now it's down to the contractor doing some cleanup in the right-of-way to take care of the right-of-way permits. Ogden Lane, you can see the bottom left picture. On that first page, you can see it newly repaved, and contractor did a fine job out there. One note I'll throw in here, working with our municipalities, Glynn County. So Glynn County is the right-of-way, owns the right-of-way out there on Ogden Lane. And right now, materials are very difficult to get a hold of. We were looking for base material for our contractor. They were struggling to find it. And Glynn County worked with us for some alternate material options. Typically, they like graded aggregate base or granite. Granite's kind of tough to get a hold of right now. They're working with us on some lime rock alternates here. So always working with our
Well,
colleagues?
no, we've got the force main turned around, and as expected, the flow rate coming into the pump station improvement has increased. The actual 4110 station is seeing about half the runtime it was seeing before, which is what we would theoretically expect if we're doubling the flow rate leaving the facility by making the changes. 40, 36, and 35, those stations are set up with a smaller duty pump that's supposed to flow match, and then two larger pumps if needed in a high flow situation. So far, the high flow pumps have not had to come on. The smaller duty pump, now it's running pretty much nonstop, but that's the way it's supposed to function to keep up with that flow. So that's doing what we needed to do. And then rerouting that flow away from the airport and away from Fletsy. Those stations, the one at Fletsy and the one out on 17 you see with the wooden fence around it, that reduced the flow going to those stations by about 75%. So we went from about 12 hours a day to 3 hours a day of runtime on those stations. So the improvements appear to be functioning as designed.
The 4036, that's the one upstream,
Yes.
or 4035. So 4036 is where the Ogden force main ties in.
That's correct, just Ogden ties in just upstream of 36.
And is there always flow in that force main coming,
Yes.
coming from down Ogden?
Coming down Ogden, there may not be always flow, but because there's 3 or 4 pump stations tied in along the way. So typically there's pretty much going to be flow in there consistently.
Yeah. And so with the jockey pump, what you call it, 4036, there's always flow at 4035.
Yes. So it's constantly, those pumps just kind of sit there with a VFD and speed up and slow down and try to match the flow rate.
So how do we run the odor control facilities at those all the time?
All the time,
Or
yes,
do they come on just when we have odors?
They run continuously. So they're pulling the air out of the wet well and treating that continuously.
Have we checked to see if the odor's an actual problem now, since we got the continuous flow in the force mains that we did not
I haven't been
have
told of
before?
any odor issues that we've had.
And maybe we don't need to run the odor control quite as much if the force mains are, and all those stations are being run all
That's
the time.
possible.
We got flow in them all the time.
Mhm. There's probably some upstream benefit, I would imagine, pulling a vacuum on that. You know, you're going to draft a little bit.
Something we can certainly take a look at.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to take a good look, because I know if you have water flowing in the force main all the time, you have less likelihood of getting hydrogen sulfide buildup in it.
Right. And as part of this project, we did relocate the discharge point further down Ogden, so now it's away from the residences.
The odor control thing, it has to clean itself or something with water, I think, or regenerate the material in there.
Yes, sir. What you do is you take it actually takes some water with a nutrient-rich spray
Right.
and sprays down, and that gives that regenerates the bacteria that actually consume the sulfides.
And that's only done when all of a sudden, when the bacteria needs to
That's
be.
correct. That's not continuous. That's correct.
So it's only done periodically, or is it just done
It's on time.
on a timer?
It's on time.
Okay. All right.
But we'll say if you scroll back up to the top right, that's the Canal Road well site that will actually be converted to a production well. So you can kind of see
Yeah.
there.
And we're gonna have to buy more land there?
We're going to require land from Glynn County and the Airport Commission out there in order to facilitate the project.
We're showing the picture here, yeah, Canal Road well site is, it's in the project site here, but our contractor did use this as a lay yard, so we're showing how clean it is. They're leaving it. They've removed all of their construction items, so. Okay, next project,
Yeah.
906, Academy Creek.
Academy Creek, Mr. Vo got us some good drone shots of the project at the top there. It's a beautiful photo, seeing the water go out through the marsh.
Those are great pictures.
Great
Nice
photo
picture,
right there.
yeah.
It's like we're trying to sell it on Zillow.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So that one's.
We could use that one
very
for our
good.
logo. Should we use that for our logo? The
Painted on the
top
water,
one?
Jason. There you go. And then, but if you scroll down, you can see there that top picture on the left. That's what the material looks like coming out of the screens once it's been washed and compressed. So obviously those chunks don't actually come into the wastewater facility. It comes in much smaller pieces than that. And then it gets compressed and washed, and so that's what it looks like when it comes out. But that is drastic improvement over what we were getting out of that facility. That container is a 10-yard container that we haul off, and we're going through them about 5 times as frequently as we were previously due to the amount of material we're getting in and out. On the right, you can see some of the odor control panels have been installed. Working with the supplier, there was an issue with the way on the far right of that picture where it's open. Those are where the pumps actually go in. It's actually just inside the wet well top, right there.
Sorry.
That's where the pumps
Down the
actually go in. The way that the manufacturer provided the odor control covers, we would not be able to actually get the pumps out because of the size of the pumps versus the size of the hatches they created. So they are literally going back to the drawing board on that one. But I will say the areas in the center that have been covered up completely, the odor control covers absolutely do make a difference. Now, if you go to either end that's not closed in yet, you can tell that it's been concentrated. So we're working through some of that right now. We were at Georgia Association of Water Professionals Conference this week in Savannah, actually spoke with the Halston rep about this project, and they are rapidly trying to get us a successful conclusion on this project.
Are we running the odor control equipment?
The odor control is turned on, but you can see the amount of open space that it's having to draft ambient air out of. So it is functioning, but not 100%, obviously, because we're not able to enclose that area. And go on down, Todd, that structure to the left, that one's been covered with odor control, the concrete structure there. So those panels are actually installed, and if you go out there now, you can stand on top of it, and very minor odors getting around the valves, but nothing that's going to get off site in any shape or fashion there. I joke with our inspector that walkway they put in, I'm going to tie off to it during a hurricane because it's probably sturdier than anything else we've got. But very nice walkway we've got from that structure over to aeration basin 1 there. And then you got some the lingering clarifier improvements. We've changed the feed well out there. That's the one, if you recall at the last meeting, we had to order a new gearbox for, so that's why that's not in service. Once that gearbox gets here, we'll get that in service. The contractor has completed those improvements. Contractor is hoping to be finished this month, but that does not appear to be likely just because of some of the lingering issues we've got, like I said, with the odor control covers, working with the suppliers on this project. But the improvements thus far have been successful, so very good job by our contractor there.
Okay. Next project talking about is 2016 ARCO area water and sewer improvements. And nice drone shot overview of the general area of where that's happening.
Show us the area, outline it with a pointer or something.
Here, let me get to this. Maybe easier if I...
Have they started work,
Yes, sir, they are working.
laying sewer lines?
Water only at this point.
Still waiting on manholes to lay sewer lines. Haven't got structures yet.
We have a supplier delivery date.
Don't believe they've actually given us a date yet.
We're still waiting to get that.
Submittals have been approved. We're just waiting on delivery on those and getting the date there. So, didn't expect that to be the holdup, but currently on these projects, it seems like there's something new on every project that's being delayed.
So in GIS, just a quick little recap here. It's the majority of the sewer improvements are all happening out in here and then out into Norwich Street. It branches off into Norwich Street over here as well. But you can see there's water already being served in the majority of this area. We're filling in the gaps with new water lines, replacing water lines.
Essentially, it's the area between 341 and the railroad tracks.
That's right. Kind of a triangular piece in there. So what's happened so far is, jump back here to the report. Water lines, see material staged out there along the railroad right-of-way, county, that's actually county right-of-way, alongside the railroad right-of-way. Around about 3,000 feet of water pipe so far put in the ground, a little bit more to go on that. Key thing to point out here is we did have a property owner approach us out in the neighborhood who owns a large number on about a block or so out there of parcels. And they're very interested in working with us to give us an easement to relocate one of the sewer lines out of the pavement in between their lots, essentially through the backyard with an easement. That'll do a couple things, facilitate tying on for them much easier, and then it'll remove some road replacement for us. Let us get it out of the Glynn County right away. So you never know when these opportunities are going to come about. Unfortunately, it approached us and came to us after we had started, but we're working real closely with them. Come before the board, and they'll change or to the plans, design plans. I think it's about $150,000. Project is galvanized replacements. That's an ongoing project that water distribution self-performs.
Ongoing, and we are doing some work now in St. Clair, and we got bids on call or as needed directional drilling work for water lines. So we'll be able to do some of these larger sections without having to do and be able to get them done quicker. So we're fixing to basically redo all of the side streets and cross streets in St. Clair, because that whole system is 2-inch galvanized other than the main loop through there. So that'll be the next
What
year.
are we replacing the galvanized with?
Poly.
Okay. Is that,
If it's larger than a 2-inch, we use PVC, but
is it blue? The blue?
poly's black
Black?
and blue, so.
But it'll have blue wire on it.
They have blue wire on it.
Blue wire and blue
I will
tape.
note, the gentleman in the high vis there, Jacob Ammons, will be here tomorrow because he just got his water distribution operators award, so
The one on the left or the right?
on the right. The guy on the left, Caleb, he's our crew, he's one of our crew leaders. He's had he does really good work for us, and so just coincidentally, Mr. Ammons there, being in the project report and being recognized tomorrow.
That's great. He's got his general purpose water distribution tool, his claw hammer in his hand right there.
Yes.
Do we know what those service lines that those lines are serving are made out of?
A lot of them are galvanized.
Are we trying to inventory those as we're doing this?
We're trying to inventory those. We talked to our meters.
Looking to meet a replacement project, and I'm happy to. We have some bullet points here, right here.
Out there, we got a construction debris canister there, kind of blocking access to a meter. So they go out and try to do some meter replacements, and things get parked on top of meters and left on top of meters. So I think he was able to do that one without having to move the dumpster, but it's always a challenge when you go out and people, understandably, don't always pay attention to where their water meter is. What are we up to now? It's about 13,000. Just under 14,000. Slowed down a little bit during the summer, one because of the weather, and two because we've gotten to some of the older parts of the system, and it's more tedious once you start working on some of those older lines.
Okay.
And Dunbar Creek, they are working currently on the tank painting portion of that project that we got underway. The tank was in a little worse shape than we expected, or at least than I expected when we went out there. So we've had to do some additional welding to fill in some of the pitting that we found, and also a couple of areas that were very thin, and when they came through and blasted, it actually blew a hole in the tank. So they got to fix a few of those as they're going through. But you see some of the welding that they're having to do and some patches that they're working on, but that's moving along pretty smoothly. Still hoping to be through end of July, early August on that project. Unfortunately, did not make the contractor aware beforehand, but they were getting started a little earlier in the morning than the Glynn County noise ordinance allows. So they've been instructed to not start any equipment before 7 a.m. So they were getting started about 6:30, and unfortunately disturbing some of the residents out there, so we've got that corrected.
Okay, that concludes the picture report of the highlights of what's going on.
On our actual projects that were not included in the picture report, the FEMA project, recommendation August meeting. That is to purchase 8 fixed and 5 portable generators that are FEMA funded. Down on some of the projects that are under, talked about the canal road facility. Water loops is about 95% complete. Out for bid. Project list, we've got a couple of tank paintings that we received an award for today. We're going to do 2 more of those. We did that engineering in-house with the help of our suppliers. So we'll be having that out for bid hopefully in the next month. Property for the Highway 17 North.
That one, and then also 4044, we've got that one on the roads, working with Prime South right now. Legal is working with them to close that. So we should have advertising for that probably this month.
And then on our EVA report, I took off all the projects that were finished this fiscal year, so you saw some, actually quite a lot of changes, but those will stabilize. We won't see as much of a change as we move forward. Taking off some of those that are complete, dropped our schedule compliance just a little bit. 185 we were at. Currently with projects, I know it doesn't sound good to say projects are 18% behind schedule, but in the current environment, we're doing pretty good with that on a lot of these projects.
So how much construction do we still have left on the tank? How long is that on?
Exactly, if they would be estimate to complete 13.6 of stuff that's currently in the construction.
So where's that column?
That's about 5 from the left, or from the right. Got, that'll tell you what, based off of how we've spent today versus the percent the project is complete, cost of completion would be.
See where that is?
Mm-hmm. Couple pages beyond that Gantt chart.
It's at the last page of the report.
Okay.
So the ETC column, that's what we've got under construction now. That's what the estimated remaining is.
That's lower than it has been, right?
That is lower than it has been simply because we were wrapping some of these projects under construction up. We're fixing to put a few more out on the street, so that number's gonna go back up a little bit.
What goal do we want to shoot for that number?
Well, the goal obviously is we put together a project plan every year and the done in the first part of the year and then roll off. So we kind of just want to have a revolving amount of construction going on. Obviously, the SWAS and bonded projects that may increase at certain times. But
Overall scope, now we're down to just slightly below 50 million. So this tells me we've completed a lot of major projects. And not only of that 49.6, we have 13 and a half, almost 14 million left to go. I don't know that there's an optimum amount there because of the ebb and flow of the values of the projects that we have. But for me, the biggest driver are those last 3 columns on the right. Schedule performance is the big one. Effectively, our cost performance also. But if we can manage those effectively, even with the challenges we have in supply chain, then I think we're doing well, as long as it's within, Todd, your bandwidth of staff. You know, and that's going to ebb and flow throughout the year too. So hopefully that, when staff feels really taxed, they're operating in high gear, they'll know that it's just for a relatively short time, and then we'll get to one of the ebb periods where it's not so taxing and they can kind of throttle back efforts in that regard.
like I say, don't look at the mountain you're climbing, look at how much fun it's going to be skiing down the other side.
Thank you.
Did a couple of conversations with some water tank manufacturers the last few weeks. We do have a project to put a water tank at exit 42. So we got some preliminary cost estimates for a composite water tank. Could you pull up a photo of a composite water tank for us? So we've talked to two different ones, got some budgetary quotes, and I think we're in line with where we expected to be on that project. Obviously, we don't have it bid out yet, but working with a landowner to acquire some property out there so that we can get that kicked off and have a tank out there near exit 42 and the interstate. Probably looking at a 750,000 gallon tank in that area due to the potential economic development opportunities that the trade winds and gateway tracks provide us.
That's one under construction at least.
You can see you got steel at the top, concrete at the bottom.
Oh, that's why it's called composite.
Yeah.
It's a steel tank and
Can you
then
zoom in,
concrete
can you zoom in
structure.
on that sometime?
So, oops,
Click it.
oops. Let's see, how about this? Let me,
Right click on the photo,
yeah,
put open in new tab. And then you can zoom in.
And that's gonna be visible coming from the north
I don't ever use this one.
to the county.
So if you look, I-95 tank, out there at exit 36, good example when we've got in-house.
So they can do them with, you know, different size tanks at the top. Some of them will be a little wider and squattier, and some of them will be a little more narrow, but that's kind of what we're considering. That's it's a good looking tank, and staff likes it because they get storage space inside the concrete pillar at the bottom.
What's the capacity of that one, if you're, would you guess?
I-95 is 3/4, I think.
Oh, this one in the picture?
This
one in the
one's-
picture's probably either a 500 or a 3/4.
Yeah,
Okay.
looks like 5, yeah, it's a little smaller.
We need to be,
Room for a logo.
we need to be thinking about what kind of logo we want on it.
Absolutely.
My original discussion with potential property owners is maybe putting something like the Golden Isles Oak Tree logo coming into town. That's sort of our signpost when we get into
Right.
the Golden Isles.
Kind of like a marker for tourists coming in,
Right.
people
Exactly.
visiting the area, yeah.
We're probably gonna have one, if Splosh has one on the south,
Yes,
south.
the SPLOST is passed as proposed. The South Mainland, we talked about redoing that well site at exit 29. We'd also be installing a tank like that at exit 29 as well. Some of the folks down at the far south end of our system have some fluctuating pressure issues just because how far they are from any well sites. So we think putting a tank down there at the south end of exit 29 will help stabilize a lot of those fluctuations. So that's the actual exit 29 tank. That's a 500,000.
500,000 it is.
Yeah.
Where's the logo?
There is no logo.
It used to be a City of Brunswick logo
Turkey
on
on
it.
there. Used to be a turkey farm.
Yeah.
That was the turkey farm, yeah, that's right.
I don't know, that's a great choice.
There is the exit to one of the tank at exit 29 out at Brooklyn. We had a few buzzards hanging out of it at one time. So
Yeah, it's kind of,
and American.
it's a little hidden.
I hope she said yes.
John Deere green.
Would it be safe to assume that any tower, anything we build like this, likely there's gonna want a need for a cell tower or cell reception on there too?
Certainly
Right
something
there.
we would go to our provider, ESG or Suez, operates that or manages those contracts for us. Obviously, if they have demand from the providers, then that's something.
Both of these two tanks though, if they're gonna be pretty tanks, if you put antennas on top of them, they're not quite as pretty anymore.
Well,
So if we wanna think about, if they're gonna be marking our boundaries and
That's-
showing the entrance to Glynn County and everything, if you have a bunch of antennas on
Yeah,
it,
it's
we
almost,
need to think about that
I guess
before
it's
we.
almost like selling advertising practically.
Yeah,
like everything else in
what are
the
we
world.
selling, for cell towers or for for Glynn County.
Right, yeah.
So if we get these two. I always think of water towers as signposts, but maybe it's because I'm in the water. I notice all the community water towers I drive past, so. And a lot of times like, you won't even see, obviously Glynn County's a little different because of the size, some of these small communities, they're welcome to wherever, you just happen to see the water towers, like, oh, I'm in this city now.
Right, you see the name. Yeah, well, I went to Fort Valley on Monday,
Exactly.
and I noticed the water towers along the way, all along 341. you know.
Exactly.
Just the name on it, though, and a lot of rust.
That's one we saw. This is one, that's a 1,000,000-gallon tank at the conference.
Oh, right, okay.
And so it looks sort of like that, it might be a little smaller than that.
Yeah.
The south side, we own the land there, but we don't own the north side, so we gotta,
Pretty comfortable about acquiring the property for the tank in the north, it's just where on the property they would like to.
Along I-95 corridor. Yeah. Okay.
You need about a half an acre, they've got 800, so it's really what,
Yeah, it doesn't seem like too big a stretch, right?
what portion of that would you like to provide me with half an acre?
anything else we need to talk about?
I believe that's it for facilities, sir.
Meeting's adjourned, thank you.